guys? We're back. Another episode of, I think it's episode number 35, Chris. That's honestly a big milestone for us, but it's a cool stat for you guys. 35th episode of all time, but first time in a while that me and Chris have back together, honestly. Chris was in Mexico the past week. We'll get into that soon a little bit. I just came back from my graduation trip. We went down to Lake George, actually. That was a fun time, honestly, good times with the boys. But we did run into a couple bumps along the way. We ran into some mouse poop. That's always fun. Chris, how was Mexico?
It was great, man. Had a great time. Got to get some sun in there. You can't really tell, I don't think, a whole lot, but definitely got a little bit of sun, so a little bit tanner here. And we had a blast. Got to swim with dolphins. Got to eat a lot of good food. Just got to experience the Cancun Riviera Maya area as an adult, as opposed to last time I was there when I was in college, and I basically just hit up all the clubs and partied my butt off and everything like that, as you would when you're a college kid. But we'll be going back probably in the wintertime again, because we really, really enjoyed it. And anybody who is looking for a good vacation spot, Hotel Xcaret in Mexico is definitely worth it. It's a little expensive, but you're not going to be coming back from the trip saying, I spent how much money and I got that. You'll be like, that was totally worth it. Had a great time. A lot of great memories.
Well, guys, I mean, if you have the money, you might as well spend it. So,
Sure.
Mexico, like I said, I mean, I haven't been to Mexico, Chris. You've got all the experience in you. So, again,
You need to go down, man. Yeah, go down. It's worth
gotta
it.
check that out. Get to Mexico.
Yeah, I took Spanish in school, and it came back to me the longer I was there and stuff. But I'm nowhere was I ever fluent in that language. But I was able to kind of pick up some things that were said and kind of converse. It also got me in trouble when they'd be like, "Hola," I'm like, "Oh, ¿cómo estás?" And they would just bust out in Spanish like, "Oh, that was a bad move because I only picked up one word that you said, and I'm not sure what to say." So I just go into English, and they obviously would all be like, okay, we'll talk English with you as well too. But
just always go with some buenos dias. That's the way to go. I took Duolingo
okay,
for a good couple months, actually. I think 4 or 5 months. So honestly, I grinded Spanish for a good amount of time. So I picked up a little bit. I think I know the basics.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say I can go into depth. Like I can't have a half an hour conversation with a random Mexican on the street or Spanish person like I see walking, like construction workers. I think it was like last month. We're doing construction on a house, and I was like, what did I say? I was like, necesito agua, something like that. I can do. I know that. I know the basics. I mean, not to say I know. I can't ramble off the whole dictionary here, but yeah, I think I can do the basics. So there's something wrong with the quality of the air, guys. So it's been a little scary, honestly. When I was up on Lake George, it honestly didn't really impact me too much. But from what I heard, not sure what type of how bad it is by you, but yesterday I was talking to my dad, my parents. They said that it got up to 3. The index was at 300 yesterday. Not sure how bad is it by you. I heard at DC, they're getting the effects now because it just passed by them. But when I was in Lake George, we didn't get any of the effects. But when I came back, like last night, I was walking back to the house, and it was pretty bad. Like everything was orange. So pretty scary, honestly. Did you guys get anything there?
Yeah, it's kind of no, not really. We've had the last few days have been a little hazy, but nothing like awful or anything extreme like that. It just this whole situation with the Canadian wildfires reminds me of back in 2020. I think it was the COVID year. When there was wildfires going on in California, and they were going up the northwest coast and turning the sky red and everything in Seattle and everything. Because I remember watching a game, and it looked like there was just fog on the field at T-Mobile Park, but it was just the smoke and everything. So it was crazy. Everyone that's out that's obviously being affected by it more than what I am here in Indiana. Be safe out there, be smart. It'll eventually get cleared up and things will go back to normal. But, for now, just be smart. Don't do a whole lot outside if you don't need to or anything like that. The pictures I've seen, it's crazy the way it changes the color of the sky and everything. So I hope everyone stays safe that's affected by it.
Listen, if unless you're planning to have some crazy outdoor trip somewhere in the tri-state area, I would steer clear of at least anything outdoors for now. Just like stay safe. I mean, I've been keeping indoors past few days. I haven't really left out. Besides the trip when I got back, like I said, I didn't really get much effects of it. But since I got back, I've kind of stayed indoors most of the time. It's cleared up actually a lot since I got back. I think we're down to 170, 160, the air index. So that's definitely improvements from past few days, but still got to watch out. Yep. Guys, we've seen some pretty fun baseball past couple of days. I've kind of sort of been out of the loop, but I caught myself up past few days. Chris, I'm sure you also lost your touch when you were in Mexico. Obviously, having some quality time with the fam. Good. Yeah. But it's getting right into it. Aaron Judge is hurt again. He's hurt again. This guy it's at this point he just can't stay healthy. Because like he's again one of the best players in the game. Just can't stay healthy. The second IL stint of the season. He'll be out 10, 15 games. Nestor's on the IL again. And the Yankees are just not staying healthy. And, that's kind of like I was speaking with BBD last week. Chris, you were out for that. Yeah. But with BBD, we were talking about how once the Yankees get healthy, what their potential is as a team. And, the talent that they have with Big G's back, JD's back. And there's really a lot of factors that come into it when it comes to the health of the Yankees because they are just a very injury-prone team. So Judge hopefully will return 10, 15 games, I'm assuming. The tests were all negative. There was nothing, no fractures, no breaks. So that's definitely some optimism over there. Definitely shows that it's not going to be an extensive IL stint, but it's still something to take in consideration now that we're losing our right fielder. And that means Willie gets more at-bats, and Oswaldo as well will get some outfielder reps. But Chris, this guy just can't stay healthy. There's nothing to do about it.
No, unfortunately he can't. There's only so much you can do and everything to try to avoid injuries and be healthy, but they happen. And it's unfortunate when they do. It will be interesting to see how the Yankees do when he's out of the lineup. I think the first time he was out, they were 4-7 or something like that. And so obviously he definitely impacts that offense, and you could argue and say that he is the Yanks offense just because of how much attention gets paid to him and knowing where he is in the order. And you obviously don't want to serve up home runs to him, which he can pretty much hit any pitch out of the park because he's just that strong and that good. So right now the Yanks are third in the AL East, which the AL East is still the only division that has every team over 500, which is incredible. But they are, even though they're in third place, they're 8 games back of Tampa Bay, and they are 10 games over 500. I mean, that's just, I don't know. I mean, I would have to look to see the last time that type of a situation happened where a team in third place in division was 10 games over 500 and they were still almost double digits behind the first place team. But it is what it is. The Rays have been on a phenomenal roll, and the Baltimore Orioles are right there in second place looking good, and the Yankees are still there. And yeah, when they get healthy, we'll see what kind of role that they can get on, because they do have a lot of talent in there, especially on the pitching side. I mean, Carlos Rodon, who was the big signee, hasn't even pitched for them yet. And when he gets back, what impact is he going to have on that rotation? And just, how well will he help them get? How far will he help the Yankees get in this season and in the playoffs as well? But unfortunately, on the other side of town in New York, the Mets are just as bad, if not worse. I mean, I don't know.
I think we could say worse.
Yeah, I mean,
they're bad.
They are. They're also in third in the NL East. They spent a ton of money this offseason to try and make their team better. They certainly made it older, which a lot of people were saying probably not a great idea. because injuries happen and players get hurt. But it is what it is, and we'll see if they can get things righted, if they can get their ship righted. They're 7.5 games behind the Braves, and they're only 2 games under 500. So even though they're in third, they're still pretty solid ball club. They really need some things to get moving in a positive direction, especially Francisco Lindor, who is not hitting even 250 on the year. But Fall, I'm sure, I know you're a Yankees fan, but I'm sure you get your fair share of Mets news over there as well. So, what's Mets Nation talking about?
So there's a lot of negativity around the Mets atmosphere right now, and especially Mets fans themselves, because again, Steve Cohen has been the biggest money spender in the offseason last year and the past couple of years since he really inherited that role as the owner. And he's splurging a lot. He splurged a lot with offseason, like you said. They brought in Scherzer, they brought in Verlander, and I think there's a lot of factors that play into this when you're talking about a team that has that much raw talent. But I really think, they are stronger on the mound than they are at the plate. I do think talent-wise, you got that Verlander, Scherzer, and obviously, Carrasco struggling this year. McGill's been solid this year. But you're kind of looking some more consistency out of the top two guys. Obviously, you lost DeGrom, but you're looking for some more consistency out of Verlander, who's been struggling really since he came back. Scherzer's been okay. Last night, he gave up 5 runs, 10 strikeouts. But the Mets are about to get swept by the Braves. Tonight's a rubber match. It's a Strider-Verlander matchup. That could be a fun one if Verlander's right. But really, just overall, I think to be honest, there's a couple guys in the Mets lineup that shouldn't be there. I think Tommy Pham, although he did have a big night at the plate last night, drove in 4 for the Mets. I do think that he's someone that has really been struggling. You got Vogelback, who's struggling a lot. Nito got DFA'd. I think that was big just because they got what's his face? Alvarez has been doing well.
Francisco.
And what's his face? Who did they just get back? They got him for the Brewers. He was their second catcher.
Narvaez?
Yeah, they got Narvaez back. So that they had to make room for, I think, of the 26-man roster. So Narvaez is now free agent. So if you want Narvaez, call him up, give him a call, and sign him to a small contract and give you some good cash guys behind the plate. His bat isn't exactly, all-star level, I would say, not even close. But he's someone, he can play a few games at catcher for you. So again, like the Mets, I think it's more of their offense than their pitching. I think they're doing a better job on the mound than they are doing at the plate. Not to say that they're doing a great job on the mound, but I do think just overall they need more consistency from the team, and their big guys need to get going. Alonso needs to start heating up again. Lindor, like you said, McNeil's been good all year. Nothing to complain about. Nimmo's been great. But other than that, I think Vogelback and Pham are kind of slowing the team down. And I saw an article last week talking about that also. Like they're both hitting under, I think it was 220, 230. But they're guys that maybe you should consider moving on from.
Yeah.
Chris. Yeah. Aside from the Mets talk, let's get into some Ellie De La Cruz, a top 5 prospect in the Reds organization. He just got called up. And honestly, I think, Chris, you texted me a couple days ago, and honestly, on point. Giving me only Cruz vibes. He's a 6'5" shortstop, great range, with obviously the complementary bat, and the speed obviously is the kind of the meat of potatoes, the heavy bat and the speed. He's slashing 364, 462 and 909 through 11 at bats. He went 1 for 4 today, and the Dodgers 6-0 loss. They did take the series against the Dodgers. Obviously, that walk-off homer by Benson last night, that was big. But De La Cruz is really giving me O'Neal Cruz vibes because he has, like I said, he has that range, he has that speed, and last night he homered and tripled. And I think it was 10.83 seconds, the fastest time from home to first. I think that was wild. I haven't seen a guy run that fast in my life. Like he flew. And he's making loud contact, and he's really hitting the ball hard. And I think aside from De La Cruz, the Reds just have a bright future ahead of them. Like they know Noelvi Marte, Edwin Arroyo, Cam Collier, Matt McLean, who's already fighting for as a spot for Rookie of the Year this year. Encarnacio Strand is a big name. He's got a 1.119 OPS in AAA, 15 home runs. So overall, I think the Reds infield definitely has a lot to look forward to. A couple of years, a lot of these guys are young. Most of these guys are in single, double, and a couple guys, Encarnacio Strand is AAA, and obviously McLean got called up from AAA, and I think it was AA. But overall, I think the Reds have a lot to look forward to. And obviously, you got India at second. So that's going to be a little tough because most of these guys will be playing some sort of spot in the infield. It's going to get a little tough. They got, like I said, 6, 7 guys in the farm system that play infield positions. So that means that you're either moving them for pitching, which the Reds can use, or you're trading them away because that's really all comes down to it. But Chris, what are you seeing from Ellie De La Cruz?
So it is like you did mention it, where they have a lot of infielders playing, and they are actually working on trying to get all those guys in the lineup. I mean, Spencer Steer has been playing first and third for him, but now that De La Cruz is up, they've put him in the outfield, and he did all right from what the reporting is saying. Like he did fine out there, which is good because you basically are going to have De La Cruz at third, McLean at short, Indy's at second, and then Joey Votto is going to be coming back at some point soon, and he'll have to play first. And then you got Encarnacion, who's in the minors, who's also, I believe, a first baseman. So yeah, you've got to find these infielders places to play, and some of them are going to have to go to the outfield. I did hear, I think it was while I was on my vacation, that Jeff Passan suggested, maybe it's John Morosi, one of those two guys kind of suggested about how the Mariners, who obviously have been awful, and they could be active at the deadline and looking for players that not only fit them now, but also in the future. And one of them was Jonathan India, who it would be a bit of a surprise move considering the Mariners got Colton Wong this offseason, but he's been atrocious. So I'd totally fine with getting India. And let's be honest, the Mariners have a good rapport with the Reds after trading for Jesse Winker and Eugenio Suarez and Luis Castillo all last season. And you mentioned a bunch of the prospects the Reds have are former Mariner prospects as well as
Marte's a former Mariner, right?
Yep, he was supposed to be the prime shortstop guy, future form. There's also talk about him moving to third. Edwin Arroyo is another one as well. Brandon Williamson, who's up with them, was a guy as well.
Wow, so there's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of guys.
The Reds cleaned up a lot of the Mariners farm system, and I think all those trades were fair. I think they were all good trades that benefited both teams and everything.
Definitely cashed out.
Yeah, but with De La Cruz, not only does De La Cruz and O'Neill Cruz come up with the same kind of like fanfare, they're both relatively the same height, relatively the same build, tall, very tall guys who are thin, but can crank up the velocity on balls that are put in play. And I haven't quite seen De La Cruz bust out and show off his arm like O'Neill did last year. I mean, one of the things that kind of makes De La Cruz give me those O'Neill Cruz vibes are every time one of them does something, there's always some StatCast number that went along with, like, he's throwing 98 miles an hour from deep short to first, like the hardest thrown ball ever, or he's hitting balls that are about to leave the park and everything that are going off at like 110 miles plus, off the bat and stuff like that. And like, that's what kind of gives me really big, besides the fact that both of them are about the same height and build, is that they're both kind of getting these numbers. It's like you said, the fastest first or, home to third triple time ever recorded. I mean, it's insane what those guys can do. But hey, when you're that tall, you should have a really long stride. So you should cover a lot of ground, and they're doing it. But he does. The other thing is with O'Neill Cruz, there's a lot of hope with him coming up and excitement with him and kind of looking at the future. And that's the same thing that's happening with De La Cruz here with the Reds, is now you have a lot of hope and excitement. You have somebody who's kind of putting the organization back on the map in the national spotlight. And that's something that is great to see for them. They've got a long ways to go, but it looks like they're developing their prospects the way that they need to be successful at the majors. And if they do, watch out for the Reds. They could be a Pittsburgh Pirate type team here in the next couple of years. Just comes out of the gates hot and surprises everybody.
And they also got the same hair. One thing I noticed off the bat when I was comparing the two, I was like, they got the same hair. Like I want that hair. That's some cool braids. I'll take that any day. Even though I'm white.
Yes.
But this is the next topic is a little more. Me and Chris decided to go a little fluff for you guys. Considering we did have an episode earlier this week with BBD. That was a fun one. He spilled some water all over his computer, but it worked out fine. That was a fun episode. But this is more of an interesting topic for you guys because obviously one of the two biggest names in baseball, both on the same team, the Los Angeles Angels, or Anaheim, if you're going to be technical with me. So the Angels are 33-30 right now. They're third in the West. And the biggest conversation right now is Shohei Ohtani because he's obviously entering free agency this year, we all know. And there's a ton of rumors. $600 million. Can he get that biggest contract of all time? I saw that this is a really cool just quote from Sportsnaut. Sportsnaut, a website that focuses on sports contracts, recently revealed contracts evaluations for Ohtani. Like, you got to keep up with me, you guys. 8 years, $230 million as a pitcher, and 10 years, $330 million as a hitter. That's combined to $563 million. So, it's inherently Shohei Ohtani. Like you see, he's many are expecting him to get somewhere near $600 million. That's just an incredible number, and you're never going to see that unless somehow we get some sort of Shohei again. But I don't think so. Someone's ever going to replicate what Shohei can do from both sides of the ball. But there's nothing really to say other than he's probably one of the most talented player in baseball, and unless you're Babe Ruth, Shohei Ohtani, you usually don't excel at both sides of the ball, and that's what he does. So there's a lot of doubt that he's going to stay with the Angels. I think he's looking to get obviously the bigger teams and the bigger spenders are obviously going to take a vote on him. They're obviously going to pursue him. Obviously, the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mets have already taken a vote on him. But it's going to be close to $500 million. Definitely going to be the most contract of all time, biggest contract of all time. I'm expecting that it's going to be 10 plus years. I'm assuming that it's obviously if you're paying him that much, it's going to be over an extended amount of time because he's been relatively healthy, which is kind of surprising when you have a guy who pretty much never rests, and he either spends his day DHing, plays the outfield a couple of games, and then he pitches a couple of days later, and he's the ace. So it's a lot. But I think one thing that the Angels need to work on, and I think this is kind of what's held them back since really they haven't made the playoffs since 2014, where they got swept by the Royals in 3. And I think what's really holding them back is the fact that they just don't do a good job of stacking up talent behind Ohtani and Trout. And I think that's kind of what's luring Ohtani away, because when you're not in a contention and when you're consistently missing the playoffs, it's not the atmosphere is just not somewhere you want to be if you're that type of talent. And obviously Ohtani wants to win. And like I said, Ohtani is a guy and he's looking for a lot of money, and all teams that are going to pursue him are obviously going to give it to him. But it's just a matter of, for the Angels, where you're trying to build and assess a playoff caliber team, and you have the two best players in baseball, arguably. Obviously, there's other guys that are similar and just as talented. But when these two guys are right, and when Trout's healthy, even though he hasn't played more than 120 games since 2019 when he won the MVP, when these guys are healthy, there's really just nothing. They're just unstoppable. But other than that, the Angels just don't do a good job of stacking up talent. And I think that's kind of why they've been unsuccessful in the past couple of years. And I just think that's something that they really need to analyze, and that's something they really need to look into, because when you're assessing a playoff caliber team, you need depth, and that's what they don't have, Chris. Because, like I said, Mike Trout signed that huge 12-year deal just to be exact, 12 years, 426.5, 30, 1 second, I think it was, 35.5 AAV. So he's obviously signed for, that was in 2019. So he's going to be with them for a while. But if you're going to build a team around him, and if he's going to be your center player, you need talent and you need depth. And I think that's something that the Angels really need to develop and bring to fruition. So, Chris, give me your take on the Trout talk.
Yeah. So, I mean, they've definitely spent and wasted a lot of time and doing what you're saying, like getting some talent around them that can be successful. They signed a big deal for Albert Pujols. That didn't really work out. They signed a big deal with Josh Hamilton way back to go pair him up with Trout. That didn't work out. They signed a big deal for Anthony Rendon. That hasn't worked out. The Angels have given out or willing to spend the big money on talented players. It just hasn't worked out for them. And you got to wonder if it's somewhere in their talent evaluation is where they're getting it wrong, that they're missing out on these guys. Because they're not afraid to spend the money, which is great. Some organizations are the opposite, Seattle Mariners. But the Angels are totally fine with spending the money, but they're just not getting guys that fit well with them. But this past season, they did make some moves that actually are paying out for them. Brandon Drury is looking to be not what he was last year, but that was obviously a career year. But he's doing a little bit more than what he's normally done in his past, and he's being productive for them, and it's been a big help for them. And then Hunter Renfroe as well has also been an additional asset for them. So those two guys help kind of lengthen the lineup for them as well. But, those are also some of the big moves they made this offseason, but it's finally starting to work. The question now is, though, is it too little too late? Like you said, Ohtani's probably looking elsewhere. He can go wherever he wants. Like any team will give him the money except for maybe the Oakland A's and the Tampa Bay Rays, just because they don't operate in giving big deals. But, every other organization I think would be totally fine and comfortable in dropping a 10+ year contract for $500+ million for Ohtani, because if nothing else, he's going to be a ticket seller, because people are going to want to come and watch him, watch a guy that can be a lights out ace of a staff, but then also hit bombs from the plate as well. And like, he's sensational. So it will be interesting to see what teams are actually going to go after him. I would not be surprised if you saw the Yankees do it again, the Dodgers, even the Mariners. They were big on Ohtani when he was initially coming over, and they missed out on him, and he went to LA. And now that the Mariners are being successful, you got to wonder if maybe that can help him, because he'd be familiar with the division, simply just moving from California to Seattle. But, it's a very good pitcher's park, which would be beneficial to him. Not so much on the hitting side, but he does have a lot of high exit velos on his hard hits. So I think he should be all right, and he could fare there. Plus, the team broke their playoff drought, and they've got a young core that looks really good. They got a lot of talent there. I think he could. I think Seattle would have a big draw if they were able to and willing to pony up the money. The question would be, what moves would they have to make in order to fit his contract into their budget and everything like that? And could that mean they're having to make some cuts to some players that they initially were hoping to have on the roster for a few seasons? But that's talk for offseason and everything like that. And just kind of going back to the Angels, during this 6-year pairing of Ohtani and Trout, the team's gone through 4 different managers. They got one final year with Mike Scioscia. That didn't work. They got 1 year with Brad Ausmus. That didn't work. Then you brought in the wizard or whatever you want to call him, and Joe Madden, and that didn't work really either. I mean, he did get some success with Ohtani and kind of just letting Ohtani call the shots on when he'll play the field and when he'll pitch, which I think has been the best thing that they got out of Joe Madden being there. But now you got Phil Nevin, who I don't think he's the greatest manager ever, but I don't know. He's doing better this year. But in that time, in that time, that 6-year period, again, the Angels are 361 and 410. They've never finished better than third in the AL West. And currently they're 8 games back of first place. And that's the closest they've ever been to being in first place in any, at their time here. And we still have a lot of season to go. So that number could go backwards even, depending on how well the Rangers keep going and the Astros. So I have a feeling that when this year's over, I think Ohtani's going to be gone as well. I don't think he'll want to stick around. They've got a lot of money tied up in both Ohtani and Trout. Can they free up money to go out and get some more players that are going to be beneficial and help them that, maybe are along the lines of a Hunter Renfroe or Brandon Drury? But it's also another thing that's kind of interesting with the Angels. When you look at like their organizationally for their entire 63-year history, Mike Trout is their number one, like most valued top player. And it makes sense. Like no one's going to argue otherwise. Shohei Ohtani is number 12 already. And he's ahead of guys like Torrey Hunter and Vlad Guerrero and some other names that play for them and help the Angels to be successful and to be a winning ball club. So I would imagine he's going to move up. He would move up higher as well, depending on how this season pans out. If they make the playoffs, I think he can move into the top 10 and greatest Angels of all time. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. But it's just, I don't know if any other organization really wants to say, hey, we have arguably 2 of the best players to play in the game, and we have them for 6 years, and they're everything we thought they'd be, but we never made the playoffs, not even once, when we had both of them on there. Like that's just that's kind of absurd to possibly have that happen.
I mean, listen, if Ohtani were to go to Seattle, I would not be opposed to it. Because we do have the Mariners number this year. We took a series and see. I forgot to talk about that, Chris. I didn't even text you about that, but now I'm gonna get rub in a little bit. Yankees took the series 2 out of 3, so we were holding your number. I mean, I'm all for the Mariners, even though it's not close to where I live. I've always liked the Mariners. Good team, good place. So if you would go to Seattle, obviously the Mariners can probably pay for it. I don't think they have any problem transferring him to Seattle, but I think overall, either way, how you gauge it, Ohtani's going to get the money. It's going to be there. So no matter what, the Angels are probably not going to get him at the end of the day. At the end of the day, they're going to be stuck with just Trout next year. So I think it's going to be back to square one at that point. And they're going to have to revamp and really just explore every other option and, think of anything possible to revamp.
If it goes back to just Trout, does he just say, hey, I'm done here too? Like
that's what I was thinking. Honestly, I don't know. I think it's too early in the game to call that shot, especially because we don't know where Ohtani's going to end up. And it could be he'll stay up in LA. It could be that the Angels will get some big name in the offseason that kind of says like to Ohtani, like, hey, you brought in the talent this year, and you revamped our team, and there's other guys here who I can rely on. Like, hey, maybe I'll stay. So who knows? But we got to come to a holding stop here. Chris has a busy night, so we got to head out. But again, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Check us out, YouTube, Spotify, and everywhere else you could probably think of is there. So subscribe, of course, give a like, share, and see you guys next week.